He was standing in my doorway like he owned the place. Bags at his feet, that arrogant half smile I'd learned to hate. My stomach sank as I took in the sight. His familiar hoodie, the crumpled jeans, the audacity itself all made real. The key in his hand glinted under the harsh porch light. My sister had given it to him. I felt my jaw tighten, the shock twisting into a quiet, cold fury. "I told you that wasn't going to work," I said, my voice low, controlled. He laughed, just a little, like my words were a joke, and set his bags down as if preparing to move in permanently. I didn't scream, I didn't slam doors. I just watched, heart-hammering, mind-racing, calculating. In that instant, I knew revenge didn't need chaos, it needed precision. I've always been the one people assume will bend. Who will say yes because it's easier than conflict? My sister, charming and careless, has a way of seeing me as invisible until she needs a favor. My ex, well, he knew the pattern too, knew I'd never raise my voice and counted on it. Growing up, I learned to keep my anger tucked behind a polite smile. My instincts buried under patience. People misread calm for weakness. I've been overlooked at work, interrupted in conversations, dismissed in family decisions, all while absorbing every slight, storing it silently. Yet the quiet wasn't submission, it was strategy. I watched, memorized behaviors, mapped motives, noted openings. My life has been a careful choreography of observation and restraint, of being underestimated while building leverage no one ever saw coming. I've learned that the world rewards the loud temporarily, but survival and satisfaction favor the patient. Every slight, every betrayal, every door slammed in my face has been cataloged. I remember them all, and when the moment comes, I act, not with noise, but with precision. He lingered in my kitchen like he had every right, unpacking a single worn duffel as if he belonged. I made coffee, careful to pour my own cup first, letting the steam curl between us. He smirked when he saw the mug I'd chosen, my favorite, blue with tiny chips, like it was a private joke I wasn't in on. Later, he leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me move through my own space. "You've changed," he said, tone light, casual, but the words carried a judgment I'd felt before. My sister popped in, laughing, brushing past me, dropping another careless comment about how helpful it was that I always let people stay. Each syllable felt like a pinprick, small, sharp, repetitive, so familiar I hardly needed to flinch. I caught his eyes in the hallway, that half-hidden amusement at my restraint. He didn't need to speak loudly. The disdain dripped from his posture, the pause before he answered questions, the subtle smirk that always followed a remark meant to unsettle me. I smiled faintly, quietly, while a pulse of calculation grew. Every slight, every glance, every whispered thanks, laced with expectation. They were all ammunition, stored silently, ready for the moment when patience became power. I caught him rifling through my drawers one evening, pretending to look for something he forgot, and something inside me finally snapped, not with anger but with clarity. All the little betrayals, the glances, the smirks, the whispered undercutting remarks, they weren't harmless. They were signs I had tolerated too much. I had given him and my sister the map to my patience, and now they were testing boundaries I'd silently built for years. I closed the drawer slowly, leaving him mid-motion, and met his eyes. No words came. None were needed. I felt the weight of all the evenings spent smiling while feeling invisible. All the polite deflections. All the minor humiliations catalogued in quiet. I realized that my calm had been mistaken for weakness, my restraint for compliance. That night, I walked to the hall closet, pulled out the extra keys, and dropped them into a drawer I would lock. I changed the lock silently, deliberately, savoring the quiet authority of the act. When my sister called, her voice brimming with surprise and protest, I only said, "He's no longer welcome." No drama, no shouting, just control, finally claimed. For the first time in years, my patience became power. And power, I understood, needed no audience. I sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, coffee untouched, mapping the situation like a strategist reviewing a battlefield. Every key in circulation, every backdoor they might exploit, every informal permission my sister had granted, it all went into my mental ledger. I noted timelines, overlaps, potential witnesses, even neighbors whose quiet observations might prove useful. I contacted the landlord under the guise of routine maintenance, confirming lease terms and clarifying who had official access. I reviewed security footage from the past month, tracing every unauthorized entry and casual violation. Each detail was a piece of evidence, a thread I could pull. My training in contract review and attention to procedural minutia skills honed in years of office work and careful negotiation, suddenly became a tool of quiet leverage. I drafted a simple, precise notice. Keys were to be returned, unauthorized access prohibited. Legal jargon wasn't for intimidation. It was for airtight protection. I checked locks, labeled duplicates, and set cameras at entry points I'd noticed they favored. Every move was measured, predictable only to me and visible to them. I didn't need confrontation. I needed control, and control, carefully executed, would ensure the consequences landed exactly where they belonged. I didn't announce the locks had changed. I didn't need to. The next morning, I heard the soft jingle of keys that no longer fit. He tried the front door twice, then the back, each attempt more hesitant. The realization dawning in slow, humiliating stages. I stayed inside, brewing tea, reading, letting the tension work quietly. When my sister knocked, flustered, I opened the door just enough to let her voice spill inside. "He said you wouldn't," she faltered, realizing immediately. I held up a hand, motioning for silence. No anger, no shouting, just the calm authority of someone finally in control. The cameras I had discreetly installed captured every flinch, every frustrated glance, every small stumble as they grasped the limits I'd drawn. By afternoon, they were gone, slamming the old locks behind them, forced to find alternatives. I watched from the window as their bags disappeared into the street, a final, quiet reckoning unfolding without spectacle. The satisfaction wasn't loud or explosive. It was precise, complete, and mine alone. For the first time in years, my calm had spoken louder than their arrogance ever could. Power had been reclaimed, not with chaos, but with patience, observation, and quiet certainty. By evening, the silence in my apartment felt deliberate, almost ceremonial. My sister didn't call again that day, and when she finally did, her voice was tight, cautious, stripped of the casual familiarity that had once frustrated me. She stumbled over explanations, excuses and justifications, all the while tiptoeing around the fact that her decision to hand him a key had backfired spectacularly. Neighbors whispered politely, curious about the sudden disappearance of his bags and the abrupt lock changes. I smiled faintly at their discretion. The spectacle wasn't mine to perform. Even my ex, usually bold and intrusive, was reduced to awkward phone calls, asking favors I would no longer grant. Each attempt felt small and hollow compared to the quiet authority I now held. I felt a subtle shift within myself. Respect for my own boundaries, validation of my instincts, and a renewed sense of self-worth. The lesson was clear. Being underestimated doesn't mean powerless. The stakes weren't just doors or keys. They were dignity, trust, and personal sovereignty. And that is why anyone who has been taken for granted should care. Revenge isn't always noise or chaos. Sometimes it's patience, precision, and the quiet reclaiming of what was always yours. Sitting in my living room that evening, the apartment finally felt like mine again. Not just the space, but the control, the calm, the certainty. The adrenaline had faded, leaving only clarity. I realized that patience had been my ally all along. Watching, cataloging, preparing, my actions hadn't been impulsive. They had been deliberate. Deliberate enough to ensure the consequences spoke louder than any argument ever could. I thought about my sister and my ex, not with bitterness, but with a quiet acknowledgement of their limits. They had tested me, underestimated me, and in doing so, had taught me exactly how far I could go without losing myself. I felt stronger, lighter, freer, my boundaries reinforced, my dignity intact. The future stretched wide and unclaimed. I would move forward without fear of intrusion, without the weight of people taking advantage of my patience. Every decision, every door I lock would be mine to make. And as I sipped my tea, watching the city lights flicker through the window, I understood this. Power doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers, and the whisper of a life reclaimed, quietly but completely, is the loudest sound of all.